Welcome to The Explainer. Hey, have you ever stopped to wonder why that second slice of pizza just never ever tastes as good as the first? Or why you get that little buzz when you find an amazing deal on something you totally would have paid more for? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on your own brain and your shopping cart to uncover the hidden economic rules that are secretly running the show every single time you buy something.
You know, it all really boils down to this one huge, universal question. It sounds so simple, right? Almost like something a kid would ask. But believe it or not, this single question is the absolute root of the entire field of economics. It's a puzzle you have to solve every single day, whether you're just grabbing milk at the store or splurging online.
And here it is. This is the fundamental conflict of our lives. On one side, you've got your unlimited wants. I mean, the list of cool stuff we'd love to have is literally endless. And on the other side, you've got your limited resources. There's only so much money in your wallet and only so many hours in the day. So the theory of consumer choice, that's basically the game plan. It's how we all figure out how to navigate this constant tug of war between what we dream of and what's actually possible.
All right, so how do economists even start to make sense of all these choices we make? Well, the first step, the first clue, is to try and measure that feeling of satisfaction, that little moment of happiness you get from something. Let's call it the joy of the first bite.
So, in the world of economics, that joy has a name. They call it utility. Now, this is super important. Utility is not about how useful something is. A fancy sports car stuck in traffic isn't very useful, but man, it can provide a ton of utility, right? It's a completely personal, psychological thing. It's simply a way to measure the satisfaction you get. It's all about you.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. That satisfaction you feel, it's not a flat line. It actually changes depending on how much of something you've already had. And this is all explained by one of the most fundamental ideas in economics, the law of diminishing marginal utility.
Let's make this crystal clear with something simple, like a few cups of tea. Look at the total utility column. Your overall happiness keeps going up, which makes sense. But, and this is the key, now look at the marginal utility column. That number represents the extra bit of happiness you get from each new cup. See how it's going down, down, down? That is the law in action right there.
So let's really dive in. That very first cup of tea on a cold day. It's just perfect. It's amazing. It gives you this massive satisfaction boost. We'll just call it 30 utils, our little imaginary unit of happiness.
Now, you go for a second cup, and yeah, it's still good, still nice and warm, but is it as life-changing as that first one? Nah. The extra satisfaction you get from it drops to just 20 utils. That drop from 30 to 20, that is diminishing marginal utility, plain and simple.
So you might be thinking, okay, if my satisfaction from things is always dropping, how do I ever feel like I got a really good deal? Well, it's funny because it turns out that this exact same rule is what creates a hidden win for you, the buyer, in almost everything you purchase. This is where you actually get to come out on top.
The brilliant economist Alfred Marshall was the one who really pinned this down. He gave it a name, consumer surplus. And what he pointed out is that there's very often a huge difference between what we're prepared to pay for something and what we actually end up paying.
Put it this way, consumer surplus is basically your personal profit on a purchase. I mean, think about the last time you bought something and had that thought, wow, I can't believe it was this cheap. I totally would have paid more. Well, that feeling, that sense of extra value, that is your consumer surplus.
Let's actually watch how it gets calculated. See that willing to pay column? That's just our marginal utility, but we've put it in dollar terms. Now imagine the item has a price tag of a flat 20 bucks. For that very first one, you were ready to pay 30, but you only had to pay 20. Boom, that's a $10 surplus for you. And it keeps going until you get to that sixth one. At that point, you're willing to pay 20 and the price is 20, it's a wash. There's no more surplus to get, so you naturally just stop buying.
And here's the best part. If you add up all those little bits of surplus from every unit you bought, the $10, the $8, the $6, all the way down, your total hidden gain, your personal profit on this whole transaction is a whopping 30 bucks.
Okay, so that model is perfect when we're just talking about one item. But let's be real. Life is all about trade-offs, isn't it? It's not just more tea, it's do I get tea or do I get coffee? Do we go to the movies or buy a book? To figure that stuff out, we need a more powerful tool. We basically need a map of our happiness.
And this is it. It's called an indifference curve. The easiest way to think about it is like a contour line on a happiness map. Any single point on this one curve.
Any combination of books and movies, for example, gives you the exact same level of happiness. You are literally indifferent about which combo you get. And the simple rule is, any curve that's higher and to the right means more stuff, and therefore way more happiness.
And what's really cool is how the shape of this map totally changes depending on what you're choosing between. If you see two things as perfect substitutes, like, say, Coke and Pepsi, your happiness map is just a bunch of straight lines. But what if the goods are perfect complements, like a left shoe and a right shoe? I mean, one is totally useless without the other, right? In that case, the curves become these sharp L shapes. It's pretty elegant, actually.
Of course, what we want is only half the story. The other half is what we can actually afford, and that's where this comes in, the budget line. This is your reality line. It draws a hard boundary showing all the combinations of two things you can possibly buy given your income and their prices. Anything on the other side of that line is, for now, just a dream. So now we have the two key pieces of the puzzle. We have our happiness map, which shows everything we want, and we have our reality line, which shows what we can actually get. So now, let's put them together and find that one perfect sweet spot, the single best choice you can possibly make.
The goal here is pretty simple when you think about it. You want to climb as high up your happiness map as you can. You want to reach the absolute best, most desirable indifference curve possible. But you can't step over your budget line. It's about squeezing the maximum amount of happiness out of the money you have.
And here it is, the big reveal. Economists call this consumer equilibrium. It's that one, single, perfect point where your budget line just gently kisses the highest happiness curve you can possibly reach. That is the sweet spot. That is the mathematically perfect, optimal choice that gets you the most satisfaction for every single dollar you spend.
So, after all these graphs and theories, why does any of this actually matter in the real world? Well, companies use these ideas all the time to figure out how to price their products. Governments use them to decide which things to tax. But for you personally, it explains that really powerful feeling of getting a great deal. That consumer surplus we talked about, that's the magic ingredient that makes you a loyal, happy, repeat customer.
So the next time you're shopping online and your mouse is hovering over that Add to Cart button, maybe you'll think about it just a little differently. You'll think about the marginal utility you're getting, the consumer surplus you're banking, or which happiness curve you're trying to land on. Now that you've seen the hidden logic behind your own choices, do you think it'll change a thing?